Hello everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips. And just a couple of announcements. The first thing is that we have a bunch of new courses for next year. And right now there are a bunch of great packages for these courses, and you can combine them with some of our older courses if you want to. Lots and lots of new stuff. So you can go to our website at wellnessforumhealth.com and you'll see new offerings for fall and that sort of thing posted on the website. We have Dr. Bregan's programs online now, The Heart of Being Helpful, Psychiatric Drug Withdrawal for Consumers, Eileen Kopsaptis' videos on physical therapy, how to fix your own knee and your own shoulder and your own musculoskeletal issues by doing exercises that she's prepared to help you fix yourself, which is always the best thing to do. And then lots of new courses such as those on the microbiome, irritable bowel syndrome, PCOS, thyroid diseases, lots of new stuff. So check it out. And if you're interested in talking about either our courses or careers, there are lots of opportunities for people who know what they're doing in this field to help others regain their health. Send an email to pampopper@msn.com. So I was looking at responses in the last couple of weeks to videos, and we get a lot of them, which is great. Keep those responses coming. And for those of you who I don't approve your comments, a couple things just to let you know. When you send me a bunch of information and links and all that sort of thing, I don't have time to check out all those links, and this is not an open forum type thing. People assume that the information they get from me, my sites and platforms has been vetted, so that's always problematic. I can't approve that stuff. When you swear at me, can't approve that stuff. If you scream at me in capital letters, also not going to approve that. And when you call me names, I won't be approving that either, just so you know. All right, so some of you write and you say, how come you didn't approve my comment? Those are some of the reasons I don't. But some of the other comments that I think I should respond to, and I promised I would in responding to a couple of you, just basically saying I don't think I can write something out that would be substantive enough to respond, are comments that I got about bone broth and comments that I got about the keto diet. And I think the first thing, let's start with the keto diet. There are lots of ways to lose weight, and some are much more unsafe than others. And the ketogenic diet is not the safest way to lose weight. And so the first thing I want to say about this and about bone broth and many of the things that you guys write to me about is often your emails and comments on my YouTube channel and all that sort of thing are all about how this is working for you, okay? Or I feel better since I started doing it. Well, lots of things work for weight loss, and I'll give you a couple of examples of things that work. Cocaine addiction is really effective for weight loss. I have not met very many overweight cocaine addicts. Now, I know you're smiling and saying that's ridiculous. Well, I'm making a point, though. If the only definition of whether or not, or the only criteria for whether or not we're going to embark on a weight loss plan is that it works, well, then you'd have to throw cocaine addiction in there because it absolutely does work for weight loss. So my first point is that that's not the right way to evaluate. You're really looking for better health, not just losing pounds. Another thing you guys are fond of telling me is how you feel better as a result of taking this supplement, or, don't confuse feeling better with getting better. There's a big difference between the two. People feel better after they have wine. Sometimes they feel better when they eat chocolate brownies. People feel better when they take drugs. That's why they do it. So there's a time to do all of those things, by the way, except perhaps the taking of drugs. But the point is that don't confuse feeling better with getting better. So let's take a look at some evidence about this ketogenic diet. There are a lot of misunderstandings about the keto diet. And one of them is that many people claim to be eating a ketogenic diet, and they're not. A ketogenic diet is very high in fat, low in carbohydrate. Everything that you eat has to be very carefully measured, and you have to test your ketones 4, 5, 6 times a day to make sure that you're staying in ketosis, because it's relatively easy if you're using this diet with an epileptic child to see if the child's come out of ketosis, because the child will start having seizures again. But if you're trying to lose weight or you're using a keto diet for something like cancer treatment, you really won't have any immediate way of knowing that you're not in ketosis. So I'm looking at food journals from people who claim to be eating a ketogenic diet, and they're not eating anything remotely like a ketogenic diet. They're just eating a bunch of fat, and that's not a ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet is a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet. It's been used since 1921 as an effective treatment for several forms of childhood epilepsy. There is also some evidence that epileptic adults might benefit too. The best experts in the country, in my opinion, are at Johns Hopkins Medical Center, which is where the diet was originally pioneered. The mechanism of action that explains the efficacy of a ketogenic diet, when it's used appropriately, is that it mimics a fasting state, and fasting has been shown to be a good treatment for seizures since ancient times. Within a short time of beginning a fast, the body stops using glucose and converts to using stored fat for fuel, a state known as ketosis. During ketosis, ketones are produced, which are unusable as a substitute source of energy for both the body and the brain. So the ketogenic diet results in this same fasting type approach. Restricted carbohydrate intake results in burning dietary fat for fuel, which allows for an extended period of time mimicking the fasting state. Fat stores are used up within a relatively short period of time, particularly in children, so you start burning fat that's taken in the form of food. Research shows that the diet works when implemented properly, which is why I made the comments before about a lot of people thinking they're eating a keto diet who really aren't eating a keto diet. But when it's done properly, many studies have shown that the ketogenic diet does resolve epileptic seizures for a lot of kids. There are side effects, however, and this goes to the don't confuse feeling better with getting better, and don't think that just because it works it's an okay thing to do. One study of pediatric patients treated with the Johns Hopkins protocol showed that during the first 4 weeks, dehydration, gastrointestinal complications, and infectious diseases, aspiration, pneumonia, hyperuricemia, hypoglycemia, electrolyte imbalances, acidosis, hepatitis, and acute pancreatitis were reported. After 4 weeks, patients remain prone to all of these complications except the dehydration, pancreatitis, and hyponatremia. In almost 15% of patients, osteopenia, kidney stones, hyponephrosis, iron deficiency anemia, and cardiomyopathy developed after 1 month in ketosis. Some patients dropped out of the study due to the side effects of the diet. Vomiting, constipation, kidney stones, and an increase in cholesterol are common. So I could go on, but I think you get the idea. If you have an epileptic child who's taking a lot of medication and still seizuring out every day, these side effects are worth it if you can reverse the epilepsy and stop it, and the child can have a normal life. Most children who do a ketogenic diet spend the rest of their life recovering from it, but they get to live a pretty normal life. But for people who are doing this type of thing for weight loss, this is insane. It's absolutely an insane choice, and there are much better ones available. So the ketogenic diet is appropriate for very specific situations. Epilepsy, some evidence it can be helpful in terms of helping people with very terrible cancer diagnoses such as glioblastoma. That's a different topic for a different day. But I can't think of anybody who is just doing this for weight loss who's a candidate for this type of diet. So bad idea. And this is what the evidence shows. And this is another thing too. When some of you are screaming at me in all capital letters and all that sort of thing, most of you doing the most screaming have the least evidence to support what you're talking about. So if you're going to scream at the top of your lungs, at least back up what you're saying, is I guess what I'm saying, okay? All right, so now I want to get on to the bone broth. And this is where the storytelling, not just by some of the people who watch this channel, but by folks out there promoting this, really go crazy. Stories are not a substitute for science, and they shouldn't be used to make decisions about your health. Stories are often reported out of context. I mean, somebody who's been consuming bone broth and reports health improvement, well, maybe they're feeling better. It's a story. Nobody's checked it out, but that's different than what the science shows is likely to happen. And stories don't change the law of biochemistry. So I mentioned on Tuesday when I was introducing Dr. Stanger, one of the things I like about her is she explains how the body works and how nutrients work in the body so that it's pretty easy to understand that some things are just impossible. I mean, you can tell stories all day long and there's just no plausibility in terms of mechanism of action. So claims that are made about bone broth include that boiling animal and fish bones, skin, cartilage, tendons, and ligaments results in a gelatinous liquid that promotes the growth of collagen and builds strong bones. People also claim that bone broth is a great source of 2 key amino acids, proline and glycine, which are important for maintaining collagen in healthy tissues. Okay, people who say these things don't know anything about the human body, because here's the real story. Collagen, like everything else we eat, is broken down into many things, including its constituent amino acids, and then the body uses those amino acids to make all kinds of things like enzymes, hormones, and cell membranes as needed. So this idea that you eat collagen and the collagen in its intact form travels to some place in the body and sets up housekeeping as collagen is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Don't embarrass yourself by repeating this to anybody. Furthermore, many other nutrients are needed to make collagen in the human body, and plants are better sources of those nutrients than bone broth. Additionally, cysteine and proline are non-essential amino acids, which means that the body makes them and there is no need to consume them in food. So people who make these claims about bone broth building collagen and these amino acids being necessary for health. They're just showing their ignorance is what it really comes down to. Supporters often state that part of the value of bone broth is that it's made at home from scratch and that homemade bone broth is better than store-bought broth and food prepared at home is generally always better. I agree with all of that, but there are a lot of great things to make at home besides bone broth and a lot of things that you could make at home and not make misrepresenting statements about, right? Better to make something that is more nutritious. Safety is definitely an issue. While the nutrient content of bone broth varies, it can be quite high in both fat and protein from animal sources. I, in fact, looked at some recipes online, and protein per serving was as high as 16 to 20 grams, and fat content was as high as 50%. Research is quite clear that copious amounts of animal protein and fat increase the risk of diseases like coronary artery disease, diabetes, and cancer. A bigger concern is the potential for lead contamination as a result of consuming bone broth. Animal bones have been shown to contain high quantities of lead, and broths made with those bones have higher concentrations of lead than the water from which the bone broth was made. The deleterious effects of excess lead exposure are pretty well known. I don't think I have to do a whole new video clip on that. You guys have probably heard enough about that. So I had written an article a long time ago on bone broth, and I was hoping that it would be another passing fad, but it seems like bad ideas stick around for a long, long time. And I think one of the reasons is that people like to hear good news about their bad habits, and they look for, it's confirmation bias. They want to do something, and then they go out and look for evidence that what they're doing is okay, and as soon as they click on some website that says it's okay or a good idea to consume bone broth, or it's a good idea to adopt a ketogenic diet, and they say, whoopee, now I've got somebody with MD after their name telling me to do it. Remember, a lot of people with MD after their name are telling people to have bypass surgery who don't need it, vaccinations that are harmful, and et cetera, et cetera. So, I can't emphasize this enough, you guys. What my work is all about is getting you to check things out in order to not make bad decisions. And everybody who watches this type of information is always quick to jump on the bad decision making that happens in a traditional medical doctor's office. But a lot of this keto for weight loss and bone broth for collagen in the body is just as ill-advised and worse, based on even flimsier evidence. So be just as judicious and question just as much when you hear this kind of stuff, and you'll determine pretty quickly it's just nonsense. All right? Well, that's all for today and all for the week. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think might enjoy watching it. Do hit subscribe so you can get these videos all the time. Don't swear at me when you answer and post things on my YouTube channel. No capital letters, and let's have a sane dialogue about some of these issues instead of all the screaming and hollering. I don't think it really gets us anywhere. All right, I'll be back to you on Tuesday with more news.